So I'm actually working on a project right now in Saskatchewan, which is kind of one province over from Alberta, almost the middle of the country, Canada. And I spent all day kind of thinking about this and kind of breaking it down, knowing that I'd be presenting with you guys tonight. So um, there's lots of different mistakes that I see in businesses. This is the three that kind of stand out. And to be honest, there's mistakes that occur in your business at different parts of the sales cycle or different parts of the delivery of the product or the service. And so tonight we're going to focus on probably one of the most important. I mean, they're all important, but if you don't make the sale, if you don't sell the product, then all the other stuff doesn't really matter. And it's amazing how often, and in fact, I had a call today with somebody I was trying to buy some compost products from, and it was the most painful phone call. And maybe that's why I chose to talk about this tonight. So that conversation will probably come up in the conversation tonight. And while I'm going through this presentation, I want you to think about your own experiences that relate to what it is that we're talking about tonight. And that's half the battle. Is if you can understand some of the stuff that we're going through, then when you go out as a consumer and try and buy products or services, you're going to pick up on these issues as well. And from there, you'll be able to relate that back to your own business and making sure that you're correcting it on your own. And when we correct these things, you can improve your business 100, 200, 1,000%. And I'm not exaggerating that number. It's usually these front end pieces of our businesses where we struggle, because what happens is that most of us that go into something like a permaculture based business do it because there's no jobs in it, or we love entrepreneurship. And we also are probably pretty good at what we do. We're probably pretty good at landscaping or, whatever it is that you do. I mean, I do permaculture consulting, so we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But we have students that do compost tea businesses, they do landscape installation, food forests, they do specifically gardens for schools. We have students that build greenhouses. I mean, the whole gamut is there. Cut flower businesses, herbal businesses, illustration businesses. I mean, it's just all within this niche. It's pretty much endless. And so chances are, if you're going into business in this space, you're probably pretty good at what you do already. And probably the front end parts of your business are where you're the weakest because you've never had to do it before. And so this is understanding the sales process, understanding how people move through your business. And the thing is that when somebody calls you to try and buy a product or service from you, they are already starting with an edge of skepticism. And so if you don't deal with that skepticism right off the bat with regards to how you handle that phone call or that first interaction, you've already lost the customer. And so we're going to talk a little bit about all of that tonight and how it plays into different parts of the business cycle. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you've got a business, chances are it's either a service-based business or a product-based business. So no brainer there. It's pretty straightforward. So service-based businesses are going to be things like consulting, potentially property management or property care. And then there can actually be a hybrid between service and products. So I have a student, he does compost tea, for example. And so you could say that he's a service, but he also sells a product at the same time. So sometimes you can have a marriage between both of those two things. And so that can get really interesting and lots of opportunities for businesses that have both products and services as well. So we're going to delineate it between these two types of enterprises. And obviously, because we're talking about permaculture tonight, we're going to tend to focus on things that are permaculture related. But we may draw upon some other non-permaculture related stuff to give some stories and expand upon some of these ideas. So the top three mistakes that we see. So the front person or owner. So this is typically the person that's going to interface with the potential customer. Does not have a clear picture of the journey. Okay, this is really important. So if you don't know how people move through your business, so how they first engage you, And then after they engage you, what happens after that? And then after that, whatever that process or opportunity looks like, what the next step after that is. And because every interaction with a product or service, and some are longer or shorter, has a series of phases necessarily. And so it's amazing how often I'll talk to a business owner and they don't really know how, or they, at least the way that they communicate on the phone would have you believe that they don't really understand the process that a customer has to go through in order to purchase that product or purchase the service. And because you're starting with somebody that's skeptical to begin with, there's more downside than there is upside for you. So you really have to have your poop in a pile in order to make sure that you properly manage the expectations of that client. So if you're on the phone with somebody and you're trying to explain your product or service and it's like, yeah, I don't really know how to get it to you, and I'm not really sure what the cost is, and I don't know what mailing service to use, or our consulting service can sometimes cost this and other times it costs that, and we really don't know. And so it's amazing how often I have conversations with people trying to just buy something from them or buy a service from them, and they cannot explain a clear-cut, stepwise approach to how to move through their business. And so the minute I get on the phone with somebody like that, they're already losing my attention. And I'm trying to get off that phone as quickly as possible because I don't want to work with that person. If they can't communicate a clear path, then I have lost faith that they're actually going to provide that product or service in a way that I'm going to be happy with, based on how they're managing the sales process. So it's really important. And so in my business, as a consultant, I have to have a really clear idea of how people engage me as a consultant. And I have a clearly defined way of talking to potential clients. So I understand, I have a sales process basically that guides people down a pathway, if you will, to determine whether or not, first, whether they're a fit. So this is the point number 2, is that people that are desperate are trying to sell to everybody. So if you're just trying to keep the doors open and you got to find that next sale and you're desperate, people are going to smell that. And it doesn't create an integral business if you're trying to sell from a place of desperation. It's more important that you're selling from a place of fit, which means you have to understand clearly in yourself and also within your business who your perfect client is. And so this is what we call niching, and really drilling down into who your perfect client is. And there's lots of reasons for this, but number 1 is that when you are talking to that client, instead of selling to them, you're not trying to convince them of anything. You should be trying to determine whether or not you're going to be successful or your product is going to help solve their problem in your service or product. And that comes first before trying to force something down their throat to buy. And when you do that, when you come from integrity, you have much better business interactions. You get better word of mouth. You have more happy customers. Everything's just better. And so if business is more about fit and less about trying to force function something, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable for you. And knowing who your perfect client is going to help you to figure out how to market your service or product, because you'll know the demographics of who it is that you're trying to promote to. Lastly, if you do not have and I've kind of hit on this a little bit, but if you do not have a well-defined or clearly rehearsed sales process, people are going to get cold feet. So you should literally, and I had to do this when I first got into trying to sell my own consulting services. Before I got into Verge, Permaculture, and Adaptive Habitat, I was a consulting engineer for an oil and gas company, several oil and gas companies. And so I never really just sell my projects. I just had to do them. I just had to design them and construct them. Once I got into my own business, I had to learn a sales process. I had to learn how to sell. I had to learn all of this stuff here that I'm talking to you guys about. And as a result of that, I was really bad at selling. I was really bad at all of these 3 points. And it just created the most awkward conversations and awkward, it's amazing anybody even hired me to begin with. And so I literally sat down one day and I wrote down word for word what my sales process is, and like what step A is, what step B is, what step C is. And I just took every sales call that came my way, and I literally had my little cheat sheet there, and I just went through it until it became second nature. And so now I have a really clearly defined sales process that really helps get to the heart of the opportunity, if there is one. And if there isn't one, I'm okay with it. So I'm just going to quickly diagnose this here, or just talk about the two different types of business. And then I've got a couple more slides, and then we can get into Q&A if you guys have specific questions. So mistake number one, clear idea of the journey. So service requires that you understand how a customer goes from A to Z with your service. Okay, so what are all the steps that they have to go through? So in my business, one of the first things, because I have a service-based business, one of the first things that people get from me is, or if they engage me, they have to do a pre-feasibility or feasibility study. So I will go to their property, I'll interview them, I'll look at their property through a very long period of time, long relative to most consultants, I think. And then as a result of that, I'll write them a report, and I'll get a really clear understanding of what their goals are, what the property wants to be, potentially what their budget is, if they're going to start a business, what business opportunities exist. And then the report, if you think about it as a Venn diagram, the opportunity that I present to them as a result of my pre-feasibility or feasibility work is the middle sliver in the Venn diagram right in the middle. From a pre-feasibility study, they'll go to a feasibility study, which is a more in-depth study. And then from there, we go to detailed design, and then from there to construction. So I have a clear understanding of not only what and when, but why. Like, why do I start with a pre-feasibility or a feasibility study? Why does that always have to precede the design? And then from design, why does that then precede implementation? Hopefully that's pretty obvious. And so because I've thought that through and it's logical to me, I have no problem explaining my rationale to my clients. And if they're looking for a permaculture engineering consultant that skips the feasibility or pre-feasibility study and goes straight to design, then I'm not a fit for them. And so we can talk more about why I do it that way, but I understand what my non-negotiables are. And as a result of that, I'm really clear about how I describe what it is that I do. And I don't do that on the very front end of a sales call. I first, I'm more interested in, again, mistake number two, does not seek fit. So I'm more interested in actually seeking a fit from this particular client. So I'll start the sales process with a whole bunch of questions. And these are premeditated questions that I ask to all of my clients. And as a result of that, I'm going to determine whether I want to work for them. And they're going to determine whether or not they want me to work for them. So we're both establishing fit at this point. As a result of the questions, you should have a really good understanding of whether or not they're a fit. And then from there, you can take them through the different ways of engaging your service-based business. The last mistake we kind of talked about was sloppy, uncertain sales process. So if there is a fit, you should understand what the next logical step of your engagement is: how, when, and how much. Okay, so this is really important for a service-based business. And these look like just like words on a screen, but once you kind of get drilled down into how to do all of this, it starts to make a ton of sense. So number two, the product-based business. So same sort of thing. It requires that you understand how a customer goes from A to Z. So today I tried to buy some compost-based materials, and there was a lack of clarity with regards to how to pay him, how he was going to ship it to me, how much that shipping was going to cost. It was really strange. And I happened to know this person. And so, I didn't really think too much of it. He's performed in the past, so I'm not too worried about it. But if I was a new customer going to him, then I might not be so sure. And so, it's really important, again, even for a product, that you understand what that process is, so that when you're dealing with, hopefully, mistake number two, it's not making it, and you're asking all these questions about, well, what are you going to use this compost product for? and what's its application, and what kind of rate are you thinking of putting it on, and what kind of problems are you dealing with? Why are you using this stuff? Why did you come to us? What do you hope it's going to solve for you? These are all open-ended questions that you can ask your clients to show that, I mean, number one, you care, but in my business, and I think it's a great thing that you can offer in your businesses as well, we offer a 100% money-back guarantee on everything that we do. And because of that, I'm really, really interested in finding fit, because I know that if I don't find fit, I'm going to have to give a refund. So it's really important to me that I determine whether or not this person is going to succeed as a result of my product or service, which is why we ask questions. And there's very specific questions you want to ask when they're going through this process. Lastly, the next thing happens, we've kind of talked about this already, but if there is a fit with your product, again, you should know how it works, how much it is, what the guarantees are associated with it, how they get it, and when. Everything that's coming up in this person's mind about the uncertainty about buying this product over the phone or over the internet, you have good, solid, logical answers for, so that they feel completely confident that when they hand your credit card over, or their cash or their check or whatever it is, that you're actually going to deliver. And so you have a very, very small amount of time to win their confidence. And if you don't, then you're going to lose the potential opportunity to work with them. So we're going to spend the rest of the evening talking about Q&A, guys, and we can specifically talk about those 3 mistakes. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Regenerative Business Mentorship. So this is a tailored business coaching program to help you get through the crappy stuff in your business so that you can increase profitability and enjoyment. Our Regenerative Business Mentorship is run by Javan Bernakovich and myself, Rob Avis. And we started this because we struggled with all of these issues in our own businesses in the early days. And we had to grind through all of this crap on our own to figure it out. And so Javan and I got together and we kind of put this program together, and we've run it a few times now. We've had incredible success. You can check out some testimonials from past students in my YouTube, in Javan's YouTube channel. And the other thing is that we're actually going to have a couple students live on a future RBM webinar in a couple weeks. So you can actually ask them your own questions to them, and get their answers. And we're going to ask them questions as well. We're actually going to have a panel conversation with them, but we'll open it up to Q&A for you guys as well. So level 1 is starting on October 17th, going till February 6th. It's $2,700 plus GST. We deliver a bi-monthly podcast. So a podcast comes into your email twice per month. And then we have live Zoom sessions where you can ask questions every week. We run small classes. We partner you guys up with an accountability partner to make sure that you get through the program. And we have an almost unlimited Q&A session. I mean, we really do not miss any questions. Everybody gets all their questions answered. And because it's weekly, you're constantly making progress through the program. So just a heads up, guys, on September 10th at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and if you're on our newsletter, you're going to get this. We're going to be hosting that panel discussion with past RBM students. So you can hear about their businesses, some of the struggles they've had, some of the successes they've had, how RBM has helped them, and ask them your own questions. And we've got all sorts of interesting students that have come through with all sorts of different businesses. And if you're on our newsletter, we'll notify you with the sign-in information here shortly. We're going to be sending out a newsletter right away about this. So if you're not signed up, I'll make sure that you guys get this, given that you signed up for this particular webinar. If you're not sure if the program is a fit, make sure you book a call with Javan or myself. We will happily talk with you for free on the phone and ask you a bunch of questions to determine whether or not you're actually going to get value out of it. The program is 100% guaranteed. So if you go through it and you do all the work that we tell you to do and you don't get any results from it, we'll give you back your money. So the same stuff that we're teaching is what we're practicing in this program, and we do in all of our programs. So I encourage you to reach out either by email or phone and have a conversation with us. So guys, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. We're just going to leave this slide up so that you guys can take a peek at it. And I think I saw a question that got posted there a little bit earlier. So I'm just going to take a look at it. And Feel free to put any questions you have about your permaculture related business, or anything else related to permaculture as well. So Piper says, biggest learning curve is pricing for food gardens and pricing for extra labor so I don't have to build them all by myself. So Piper, this is a really great question. So I'm assuming that you're struggling with understanding how much you should charge for what it is that you're going to end up installing. And this is a problem that I had when I was first getting started too, because there's so many moving parts. There's so much to think about in a permaculture design. Lots of plants, lots of potentially excavating, maybe rain tanks, fencing, chickens, all sorts of stuff. Like, you know, it can be very, very complicated. And so one of the ways that we started working, and we're kind of doing the same thing right now, except that our scope is quite broad. So we design resilient homes, acreages, and farms, which means that we do everything from low energy buildings, food gardens, solar photovoltaics, solar thermal, rainwater harvesting, septic. I don't necessarily do all of that stuff myself, but I am the kind of lead designer and project manager. And then whatever I don't do in-house, I find talent elsewhere to help kind of fill the pool, essentially. So there's a lot there. And so I need to know enough about all of those different problems or opportunities on a particular property to be able to know to actually call the right people and build a team as a result of it. So there's lots of moving parts. So one of the most important things that you can do as a result of running a business like this is stop giving free estimates. And I know that sounds crazy. And if there are other people in your area offering free estimates, it's a great opportunity to differentiate yourself. So you're probably wondering, why would I stop giving free estimates? Is that going to kill my business? And the answer is not likely. It depends on how you manage that. But the thing is that you have to remember is that for people that do work like you, people that offer a service, and ultimately it ends up becoming a product, but initially it's a service, it's a design service or a consulting service, is that a lot of us give away our most valuable resources for free, okay? And that is the quote. So how do you come up with a quote? You come up with a quote by doing the design. Like, how can you possibly quote out a project if you haven't done a design? And so the only way to do that is to do a quote. And so then you don't want to spend a ton of time on that quote if you're not being paid for it, because there's no guarantee that they're actually going to hire you to do the work. So the only solution to this is to recognize that as a designer, you have immense value. Your highest value offering is actually your thinking. You've trained for very long periods of time. And as a result of that, you need to charge for that thinking. And you'll do a much better job if you're being paid to think about their problem than if you're doing it for free. And that's exactly what I tell to my clients. I won't do the quoting or the design work for free. I charge actually a very fair price for that. And as a result of it, because I'm being paid for it, I spend a lot of time thinking about it because I can afford to, because somebody has sent me a very strong signal that I'm not doing it for free. And the thing that is really important in your sales process to explain to your client is that as a result of doing all of this thinking and all of this design, if they choose to go with somebody else to install it, another installation company, no problem. Because every way along the way, you make sure that all of your services are completely standalone. Meaning that if they hire you for a pre-feasibility or feasibility or design, they can stop at any one of those stages and have had incredible value delivered to them. And that's really important. They're not just paying you to do nothing. You have to deliver some value to them, either a set of plans or a plant list, or a quote with a hand sketch or something. It depends on kind of how your business operates and what you want to offer to them. But it should be enough that they can move to the next step, even if it isn't with you. And as a result of doing that smaller thinking piece of work, you're going to determine whether or not, and the client will too, whether you guys like working with each other. And if you do, then you can take it to the next stage. And so this is what I mean about having a really clear design or process that you take your clients through. So the first thing is you get on the phone with your client and you say, well, okay, so my name's Piper. I'm going to talk to you for about 20 minutes to see if you're a fit. I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. And as a result of these questions, you're also going to determine whether I'm a fit with you and you're a fit with me. And if we feel like there's a fit there, I can tell you a little bit more about how much our products or services cost, when we're available, if we are available, and what the next logical step might be in our engagement. And they're always like, great, that sounds fantastic. That's exactly what I want. And then I ask them a whole bunch of questions about their situation and then what kind of problems they're having. And then if they don't solve these problems, what's the result of not solving that problem? And then if they do solve that problem, how is that going to make their life better? And so it's a very, very specific way of asking questions to really get a good picture and understanding of what it is they're trying to deal with and whether or not your product or service is actually going to solve their problem. And again, like I said, all of our products are guaranteed, and I can make that guarantee with a lot of confidence as a result of this sales process. I know pretty quickly whether or not a client is going to benefit from collaborating with us or if they're not. And like I said, I don't want to work with people that I don't think are going to be a fit because I have a guarantee. So after that, if they're a fit, then we talk about how much it costs to get me engaged and what my availability might be. So whether it's next week or 2 months from now, how long it will take in order to produce that first piece of work. So 1 week, 1 month, 2 months. What the deliverables are going to be as a result of that work. Are they going to be plans? Is it going to be a report? Is it going to be a meeting over Zoom? What is it? And then if they're good, then we only at that point, and they've agreed to the price and the time and the deliverables, do we offer them a contract. I will not put a proposal together. They're only contracts. So they get a 1 to 2 page contract. From there, that leads to payment. So we accept payment up front, and then we start work. And because everything's guaranteed, we hold that entire amount behind until the work is complete. Then we sign off on the original contract that we've created, and then we move on. And so that's the way that our consulting service works, and it seems to work really well. That's also, I think Javin runs a pretty similar process as well with his consulting services, and he offers a whole bunch of different like life design as well as property design. And so because you've been paid that, you can spend the time that you need to spend designing that food garden and making sure you've got all the pieces accounted for in your design. Hopefully that answered your question there. If you guys have any other questions, please put them up into the Q&A tab down below. I'd love to get to them. I'm just going to check the chat. Looks like somebody's chatting there. Perfect. Thanks, Piper. I'm glad that you got something out of that. Do you guys have any other questions? Oh, so Piper asks a question. If you have time, how do you vet talent, i.e. labor you work with? So this is going to be labor or trades. That's a really good question. And I would say 50% of it is gut feeling. And 50% of it is, I don't know. I have a few questions that I ask of some of my trades. I'll just give a story. So I was I'm in Saskatchewan right now, as I said. So I was here actually trying to find a plumber to do some work for me, and I wanted him to give me a quote. And knowing what I just told you guys about giving free quotes, I have no problem paying a tradesperson to come in and help me spec a project. Although because I'm an engineer, I generally know a little bit about plumbing and do a lot of plumbing on my own. So I can usually specify a project on my own. However, I do really appreciate having a really great tradesperson that can call me on bad ideas. So I always leave room for the trades to come in and completely change my idea if they see a better way of doing it. So I called this one company, and one of the things that we do in our contracts when we're working with our clients is we ask them a really important question, probably one of the most important questions in the whole contract creation process, which is, what are your metrics of success? In other words, when I'm asking the client, how are you going to determine whether or not our collaboration together has been successful? And they're always really thrown back by that because nobody asks that question. And so I always have to kind of break it down for them a little bit more and say, and the best way that I've found to do this is say, well, what are the worst experiences that you have had as an individual trying to purchase services or products from other people? And inevitably, they'll have something like, well, I hired this one tradesperson and they never returned my phone calls. And then when I finally got in touch with them, they were passive aggressive with me. Or I hired an engineer and they were passive aggressive with me and made me feel stupid right from the beginning. And so you can kind of get out of the conversation. Like if you're going to give a guarantee on your work, what is it that you're guaranteeing? So you need to define it. And so we use metrics of success in order to define that guarantee. Now you can use this in your acquisition of labor and trades as well. So I was talking to a plumbing company to try and hire somebody to do some plumbing work for me. And I asked them a really simple question. I was like, well, it's really important to me that when you do your plumbing, that it's really square. And he got super defensive with me about it. And I kind of grilled him a little bit more on this question. And I said, well, why are you getting defensive about this? Like, don't you take pride in your work? Like, why can't I, as a customer, ask you some of these questions? And eventually it got to the fact that, he's always being drilled for time and money. So his customers are always trying to get his price down and giving him a hard time. And so he basically admitted that he just gets it in, gets it done as quickly as possible, doesn't care about how it looks like, has no pride in his work. So I didn't hire him. And then I had another interview with another set of plumbers, and they ended up coming over to the property to see what it was that we were trying to do. And I made a comment about me really liking pipes that are square and like laid out properly. And the plumber pulled out his cell phone and took me through about 50 images of all of his boilers that he put in, like his babies. Okay. And these were the most beautiful boiler setups you've ever seen. I mean, there were boilers mounted on checker plate, all the angles were square. And so I guess to get to the answer to your question, the answer is that you want to make sure that that you're thinking about what these metrics of success actually are. And as a result of that, you can kind of preload the conversation or the expectations so that they understand how you're going to judge whether or not they're going to be successful. So you can ask these questions. So if it's a laborer, you might have some bad experiences with past laborers that you've hired. And so you can turn those bad experiences around into a positive experience, and you can create metrics of success for your staff that will allow you to ensure that the relationship is going to be fruitful, essentially. So hopefully that made sense. You need to think about how you're going to judge people. One of the interesting things with, and this is a big problem for consulting that I've seen, is that consultants who are trying to sell their services don't set the right expectations from the beginning. And so there's all these unspoken expectations that exist between you and the client. And this metrics of success concept should be used as a way of vetting and getting all those unspoken expectations out into the open. So hopefully that made sense, Piper. So Jonathan, the best way you can use your garden and home for to monetize it is by having open yards. So in fact, about a week from now, no, less than that, this Saturday, we have an open yard at my house in Calgary, and we charge for it. And we usually have anywhere from 10 to 15 people that come over. And there's always people that either want to hire us or take our courses. And if they don't want to do any of that stuff, then, they've paid me for my time, and I stay there for 2 to 3 hours. And I walk them through all the different systems we've designed and how they work, and what I like about them, and what has failed, what hasn't worked, and what has been absolutely outstanding. And then from there, you can use all of your hard work in your garden to sell your consulting services. But again, once you get them to an open yard and then they make that phone call, you have to make sure that you have a really clearly defined way of selling your services to them. What it is you do, how much, and you don't just go straight into that in your sales call. You have to really get a sense of what it is that they want to do by asking them a bunch of hard questions. And then from there, determine whether or not your specific service is going to be a fit, and if that client is somebody that you want to work with. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, so how do I advertise open gardens? So basically it's on our website, and we have a mailing list, which goes out to a bunch of people whenever those open yards are available. Sometimes we'll put them up on, excuse me guys. Sometimes we'll put them up on Facebook, it can be successful. Sometimes I'll do a YouTube video about it. And then other times what we've done, so this is coming back to that niching piece. If you know who your perfect client is, for example, let's say that they were homeschool moms that want to have organic food for their kids 12 months of the year, or whatever it is. The minute that you know who your perfect client is, which is moms that homeschool their kids, you instantly know where they spend their time. Right? You can find homeschooling groups. You can find stores that cater and sell products to homeschooling moms or dads. You can do all sorts of demographic research about that particular demographic. And so what you could do, and we've done this in the past, is you could offer a free open yard to a local homeschooling group and then have them come in. And even though they're not paying you, they're coming to your property to learn, and they're going to see whether or not what it is that you do is going to be something that they want to do on their property. So niching is really, really important in determining or helping you to get the word out about what it is that you do. So we call that hub marketing, and we use hubs like, for example, a homeschooling store would be a hub for homeschooling moms and dads. We would go to a hub like that and say, hey, do you want to do a collaboration? We're going to host a free open garden for all of your clients. So now you make the homeschooling store the hero, and you get access to their network, and they get to come, all these homeschooling parents get to come to your garden and do your tour. And now they're really happy with the homeschooling store, and they get to meet a completely new person that's doing super cool stuff. So lots of ways to advertise that. Hopefully that made sense. So that's Monday, September 10th at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We're going to be doing another webinar just like this, and we'll have some past RBM students in there. And yeah, would love to see you guys. If you have any questions for past students, make sure you show up. You're definitely going to learn a lot about their businesses. They'll talk a lot. I think we've got Edible Landscape Design, which is an edible landscaping company in Victoria. I think they've doubled their profits as a result of RBM. And I think we're going to end up with a woman who is doing a cut flower business, as well as some landscape design as well. So be some really interesting case studies there. Make sure you show up. If you're on our newsletter, you'll find out when they get in. Okay, folks. Well, hopefully that answered some of your questions. I'd love to see you guys in the next call. And if you have any questions about regenerative business mentorship, make sure you get in touch. love to chat with you on the phone and hear about your business and some of the struggles that you're having, if you are having any struggles. I love permaculture and I love business. So, and I love chatting with folks that are doing both of those things. So thanks so much, guys. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the next call.